It's like a sugar crunch coating thing going on or something.
Yeah, it's not just like a frosted flake coating.
No, there's more
it's
to
a
it than that.
A little hardier.
Yeah.
A little hardier on those flakes.
Yeah, like it's the evolution tree where it starts with corn flakes, it evolves into frosted flakes, and then its final evolution is raisin bran.
Who's eating cornflakes in 2020?
I've never
Reveal yourself.
eaten cornflakes.
Especially not like the frosted ones, just straight up the one you're talking about, the one with like just the rooster on it.
Yeah,
regular ass cornflakes that they put athletes on. Who's eating that shit?
Who's eating those, and who's eating Cheerios that are not Honey Nut
or
some other variety
or whatever?
Yeah, some other any variety. But like one time, I just thought Cheerios and Honey Nut Cheerios were one and the same. And I bought a box of Cheerios one time, and man, disappointing.
You know who's eating those is toddlers. Toddlers eat regular Cheerios.
Yeah. And they're also throwing them on the floors of restaurants when they come out to eat, so I can sweep them up.
Yes. Correct.
But I do want to file this under things that you never notice were weird until you go to another family's house.
Yeah.
But in my childhood, like my family had a framed box of cornflakes that had Leave It. They had Beaver and whatever his older brother's name was from
Wally?
Leave It. Yeah, like it had them on the, and I don't know why this was just framed in our kitchen.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. This is episode number 36, and my name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with Randall Nolery.
Hey everybody.
And John Hines.
Hello, hello.
We're a little bit shorthanded without DJ tonight, but we're going to hack away regardless and talk about some more video games per usual. DJ will be back with us in a couple of weeks. And I guess I just briefly wanted to mention, we don't have to like go into any kind of long conversation about it, but I know I was kind of picking your brain before the holiday episode, Randall, about Slay the Spire and how you were able to conquer the spire, I guess, or the heart.
I'll always talk more Slay the Spire.
And yeah, I don't have too much more to say other than I was able to beat it with the silent.
Oh, nice.
Both on regular, like, you know, just the standard difficulty, and then I opened up, I think the Ascension mode is what it's called.
Yeah.
Which I believe Ascension mode level 1, which I was also able to beat, which adds all of your like elite enemy encounters, or just a little. I think it just says they're more difficult. It doesn't really say if they have more health or do more damage. I don't really fully understand, but just those elite encounters were a little more difficult. And then now Ascension level 2, which is what I'm starting. Again, you can only do the Ascension level with the character that you've beaten the game with. So like I can't do Ascension mode with the Ironclad or with the Defect, the aptly named Defect character.
Yeah.
Who I've still only played one round with.
Right.
But yeah, the silent. So yeah, I'm just kind of chipping away at and I kind of did take some of your advice, like I guess one in some ways and in some ways not, but yeah, just kind of stacking, like going with the flow. But yeah, my most successful runs have been like taking those poison cards and like, oh, I'm really able to stack this. Oh, I got cards that double the enemy's poison. And like all of a sudden you're just dealing out damage like without even realizing it.
Those are huge on the boss battles. And I would imagine, especially in Ascension mode, since you are facing so many more elites, that would come in handy like crazy.
And now that I'm on Ascension level 2, all of the enemy encounters are more difficult, or at least I think now it just says like the normal enemy encounters, but I'm assuming that also the elites, you know, remain at the level that they are in level 1.
It's kind of interesting because I've seen online where people are actually like, well, actually Ascension mode is, at least the first version, is almost easier than the normal game because the elites, when you defeat them, are going to drop relics, and relics are probably the most powerful thing to like increase your odds of beating the game, in my opinion. So
gotcha.
Yeah, I would agree with that, although with what you said, although I would say I don't know that there's more elite encounters. I just experienced that they were more difficult. I didn't notice them popping up more on the map or anything like that. Maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. I do tend to take the routes that I see more question marks on.
Yeah, I do too.
Or like the path that like, okay, I know there's a merchant up that way, and like I'm gonna have a decent amount of coins, you know, if I'm able to survive until then. So like I want to definitely either remove a card from my deck or buy a potion, or maybe even buy a relic, you know, if I've saved up. They're typically the more expensive items in the shops, but I still am just loving this game. I've been been able to suck my time into some other stuff more recently, so I've kind of, you know, put it to the side for the last week, but still find myself like booting up a game every once in a while, and looking forward to seeing if there's anything beyond Ascension Level 2, or, you know, I don't know what's going on, because it just kind of, I guess, yeah, never mind. I was going to maybe give away some kind of spoiler, but yeah, if you haven't played it and get to the end, but it seems like I have not achieved the true ending of the game. I would assume that is the case.
Yeah. John, have you played more of it too?
I've played a few runs, but I have not reached the levels of success that you guys have.
Gotta join the Winners Club.
I will say that success does come kind of like, not, it doesn't feel lucky, but there is an element of chance for sure, of like the layout of the maps or the acts that you get, you know, and how many, like sometimes I've had like chunks of like, I did almost half of this act, like just kind of bouncing from question mark.
Yep.
And, you know, was lucky enough, or even maybe had a relic that was like, none of the unknown nodes or whatever are going to give you a battle. So I was always running into just either, you know, sometimes it's not always a positive encounter, but for the most part, you have a positive like option, or at least a kind of just like, I'm just going to bypass this encounter.
Right.
So I've had times like almost this whole second act, I just basically just bypassed. Now I'm not getting any coins, and I'm not able to buy anything, and I'm not getting any relics from beating elite enemies, but
yeah,
I was able to just kind of jump through, and I was able to stack up enough cards and get lucky on some of those where I was able to add more powerful cards to my deck without facing off with as many enemies. So
right.
But yeah, I don't have too much more to add to it unless anybody else does. But yeah, I just still am playing, and just I'll keep y'all posted on now that I've lapped Randall here on Ascension mode.
I know, I need to boot it up again. It's been too long.
Yeah, it still is like always staying on that front page of my Switch, no matter what.
Yeah,
so
can't blame you for that. It's a perfect match. It's a perfect marriage, having Slay the Spire on Switch. Honestly, it's awesome.
Yeah, you know, I will say, too, I did play it in bed the other night, just like laying in bed with my Switch, and I messed around with the touch controls. Yeah. It feels kind of nice to kind of like grab the card and like flick it at the enemy that you want. Like, not flick it, but you like drag it over, and like, the arrow kind of follows around it. It feels kind of nice. So.
It works better than I thought it would, actually.
I was worried it would be a little clunky, but it feels nice.
It does.
It feels nice. So, but anyways, I guess I can just move on from there to the other game that's actually been able to suck me away from Slay the Spire a little bit. And I've been playing a ton of Sparklite, and I think I might have talked John into picking this game up as well.
Oh, you know.
Don't
be coy.
I had some extra points with my, unfortunately, now that Randall is better than me in another way, but I got my Amazon points, and I cashed in, and I ordered some gifts for, you know, the family and stuff off Amazon, I, with my credit card, got some points. I had like 50 or $60, so I picked up Children of Morta, and I picked up Sparklite, which is the game that I have been playing. I haven't picked up Children of Morta yet, but this is basically like a top-down Zelda roguelike, and again, it's called Sparklite, just in case that was confusing. But yeah, it's just like a top-down Zelda-style roguelike without... like almost calling it Zelda style. Hack and slash is maybe a better way to call it, because there aren't really like puzzle dungeons. Like when you get to the boss dungeon, it's literally just like go into a room, break up some crates to recover your health, and then go fight the boss. Like there's nothing about it. And even really in the overworld, I mean, there's a little bit of like going around and blowing up a rock once you get some new items and stuff, like a mine or something. And I blew up the rock, and there's a hole under the rock, and I can maybe get a new item under there. But essentially, it's got like a little bit of a steampunk aesthetic. It's got some nice like 16-bit-esque pixel art.
I like that pixel art.
I really like it a lot.
Good.
It
reminds
definitely
me a lot of Moonlighter.
Yeah.
Same aesthetic.
I can see that.
It's like maybe a little cutesier than Moonlighter, just like a little bit
more like
in like the character design.
Yeah, things. Whereas Moonlighter is very like color on color, or like lineless line art.
That's a good way to delineate the two for sure. But yeah, really like the pixel art. That's definitely what caught my eye with this game.
Yeah.
But I really like, all these, there's a lot of these games, John and I were kind of talking the other day, like these games that just kind of slap on these roguelike mechanics or this element of procedural generation. And a lot of times it's just kind of thrown in to just like get some longevity out of your game or whatever, even though I like a lot of these games more often than not, to be honest, at least the ones that I tend to play. And this one is no exception. I mean, it's kind of broken up. So every time you land in the overworld, you're kind of like floating in this airship that they call the refuge, I think. Mm-hmm. And you anchor down every time you die, you start over and you land in the refuge, or you start in the refuge and you land down, you drop anchor. And it's kind of these steampunk aesthetics. And when you land down in the world map, unless I'll get to that later, but like the whole map is covered in cloud, like you can't see anything, and you start in like the main zone, which I think is called the Vinelands, and then you essentially you fight through that. It's again procedurally generated each time you die.
That's cool.
But you once you beat the boss, then essentially that second area, or that first area is cleared. You don't ever have to fight that boss. It's actually kind of locked off.
Oh wow.
And then you just don't even really have to mess around with that region other than to collect more of like the Sparklite, which is your currency in the game.
Okay.
And that you're using to upgrade and craft stuff, and I'll get to that in a sec.
Ooh.
But yeah, and it's a little bit janky on the crafting in some ways, just the interface, I guess, but it's really fun. I like how the mechanic works. Like your weapon, again, to get to that steampunk aesthetic, is like a wrench. And you essentially have this patch bay on the refuge in the medical bay that you're picking up these patches that you can add to your patch board, and you get like a quarter heart upgrade. But then when you get 2 of those, you can fuse those 2 together to make a half heart upgrade, and then fuse those together to make a whole heart upgrade, and then fuse those, like you get a damage upgrade, which that takes up like 4 spaces on the grid. So it's kind of got that like Resident Evil 4.
Oh man, you're speaking my language.
But like a little bit of that, like, you got to not resource management, but space management, I guess.
Inventory management.
Yeah.
And crafting. Yes.
And some of these patches are just going to show you where like the bosses are on the map. And again, you can't see the map. It's all covered in cloud so like, for example, after you beat the first boss, you go back to the refuge, but the world hasn't fractured. Each time you die, the world fractures. And that's kind of the theme, or like the storyline, how they're able to tie it into the way the game works, like why it's procedurally generated, essentially. Mm-hmm. So it has like a rhyme and reason in the game, which feels kind of cool. But yeah, so like after you beat a boss, you land on the world, and everything that you've explored up to that point is still uncovered. Like the clouds are all clear, but you essentially just kind of clear each zone as like its own level. There's new enemies, they get progressively tougher, but again, you're like crafting new patches to add to your patch board that are just making your weapon more powerful and making enemies' attacks do less damage and adding health and just adding stuff. I haven't fully upgraded that medical bay, but you're finding this game is just really cool. I was just going to start going into like another topic. I could just keep rambling. But John, I know you've played a little bit, and I'll go into it a little bit more in a sec. But what do you think so far in like the little bit that you've played?
Yeah, so I haven't beaten the first boss yet, so I'm still wandering around the Vinelands area. But it still offers you like a lot of like different mechanics in that. Like I've like unlocked, I think from like the first time that I saw you play the game, like you had a lot of different like mechanics unlocked, like the workshop or the health bay or like the tinkerer or the merchant, and like there was just a bunch of stuff that like I've already like. I do tend to over prepare for stuff. So even though like I've been able to reach the like boss of the level like at full health, I'm like, what if I just collect more money and then just upgrade stuff instead?
A little stronger.
Yeah. So like I've been doing a lot. So there is a lot unlocked like right off the bat, and like it doesn't overwhelm you with stuff. Like you still have to like discover the people like in the Vinelands before you can actually like do a lot of this stuff. But and I think
you
one of them
rescue them and they come back almost like in Chasm. Like you find the people in the world and then they come back to like the main town or the main refuge, and then they offer some service to you. Basically,
this game is made for me.
I'm a sucker for as well.
Dang.
Yeah. But I guess like you mentioned the workshop, and that's kind of what I was about to get into is like, so in the world, like in each section of the world, there's like these little temples that you find separate from the the boss dungeon or whatever, where you find like a new item that you're going to get, like a secondary item. So your wrench is kind of just your hack and slash sword essentially. And then you get like, the first thing you get is kind of just like this little like crossbow thing that shoots out like a little beam of electricity. And then like, so when you find that, you get the item and you're in a little dungeon that's like, this is like the one little area where there's like little puzzle dungeons and you have to shoot these targets or utilize the new, like you get like a swimming mechanic later that allows you to swim in deeper water. Like there's lighter colored water, and then when it's dark you can't walk in that, otherwise it slows you down when you're in the shallow water.
Okay.
But yeah, when you go in the deep water, but later you get like a little bubble thing that lets you swim, and then you have to go through a little dungeon and solve the little swimming puzzles. But you essentially, when you get to the end of that dungeon, you have to give the item back, but then like your character is like, it's like, I think her name's Ada or Ava. I think it's Ada, but it's like Ada reverse engineered the crossbow thing. So it's kind of, again, I just really like how it ties like the themes in it. Like it really the world feels very lived in,
Nice.
very alive. Like, and yeah, I'm just really sucked in. I like the music. It's nothing like, I'm not humming the tunes constantly in my head or anything, but it just like fits the aesthetic, whatever zone I'm in. Yeah, it fits the vibe of the level. And I'm actually it seems like there's going to be 5 zones, at least on the main overworld. You know, you never know with these games if there's going to be some kind of extra thing, but I have made it to the 5th zone, and I'm just like plowing through this game.
Nice.
But just having a lot of fun because, yeah, it makes every time you go down to the world, even when you die, you're getting Sparklite every time. The one thing I'll say now that I'm like getting to the point where the upgrades are getting a little pricier, going down into the world, like I'm not getting as much Sparklite. Like I'm having to play a few runs at this point to really be able to put my money towards anything of any worth to me at this point.
Right.
So that's been a little bit of a disappointment, but I'm getting to what I think is the tail end of the game.
How many hours in
not
you
a huge
think you
complaint
are so far?
I would say I'm in like the 10 to 15 hour range, maybe more, but no more than 20 at the most. But
sure.
I've definitely been like playing this as like whenever I have free time and I'm not playing Slay the Spire, which is lately this has been more like when I'm not playing Sparklite, I'm playing Slay the Spire.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm really having a good time, and I'm excited to finish this game. I was just telling John earlier too, this is probably the first game in a really long time where I'm like, I'm gearing up and I'm playing it. I'm like, I really hope there's a new game plus, because I wouldn't mind. The one thing I'll say again, a lot of these roguelike games tend to be on the challenging side, and not that this one's so easy or anything, but pardon me. But it is on the easier side. Like I would say the combat, especially as you can just kind of commit to grinding and like level up or beef up your weapon. You can kind of, I am hitting some enemies in this 5th zone that are causing me some trouble. But up until now, I've been able to pretty easily just slice my way through without too much struggle. But that's kind of the game I would go for these days, to be honest. Yeah, I'm all about that. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
be a little laid back for once,
Yeah, and I even don't mind that there's no like puzzle dungeons, because especially if it is going to be procedurally generated. Like, I like that they're just we're not going to mess around. We're just going to stick to these core mechanics. And again, it just feels really good to move around. You have like a little booster, like kind of jetpack thing that you can like launch yourself, a little quick like dash. Yeah. And yeah, it just feels like you don't move slow at all. It feels very fluid to move around. I really love just moving around. And a lot of times in top-down games, that can be kind of stiff. But it feels like you just have a full 360 degrees of motion, which feels great.
Nice.
So, yeah, I personally can't recommend this game enough. I'm excited for John to play some more, and hopefully all of us to play some more.
Seriously.
But I think I can wrap that up there for now, and I'll follow up maybe after I polish this game off and maybe find out if there is a new game plus. But Randall can kind of talk a little bit here, and I think John's played a little as well about a game that I think we've all been waiting a really long time for.
A really long time. A couple decades plus. Honestly, I mean, close to 25
waiting
years,
for an official
really.
release.
At least an official release. Yeah. But we're going to talk a little Star Fox 2, which was just added to the Nintendo Switch, like Super Nintendo service on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And then also was I forget, probably
it was also on the SNES Classic.
Yeah, the SNES Classic Mini.
Yeah, that was kind of
came out about a year.
For
was that about a year before?
2017 was the SNES Classic.
Okay, so about 2 years before.
Yep.
So, okay,
Man,
cool. Well, yeah.
I was really tempted to pick up that SNES Classic almost exclusively for that purpose. Like, this is my way.
I picked up that baby.
Yeah.
That was the only selling point. That was the only reason I considered buying one. So I was like, we've talked a little bit on the podcast before, but at least Randall and I have a decent retro collection of actual cartridges. So, like, there wasn't too much in that package that I didn't have. But Star Fox 2, you're speaking my language a little bit. So,
and I did technically have a cartridge of Star Fox 2, albeit a illegal bootleg one of a ROM that had been floating around on the internet for a long time. But come to find out, it's not even the finished ROM. The actual finished ROM.
Oh, really?
Yes, was never released up until this Super NES Classic, and then now, thankfully, on the Super NES online Switch service, which I was a little bit surprised that they put it on there. I thought they'd just kind of keep it with that SNES Classic as kind of like the reason to buy that, but maybe they're not manufacturing those as much. I don't know. But yeah, Star Fox 2. So originally this game was like fully developed. It was ready to ship. Like Nintendo had worked with Argonaut, who had also developed the original Star Fox, and I believe Stunt Race FX as well. They were big, like, early 3D, like, super gurus. They helped Nintendo develop the Super FX chips, actually. So this was one of the few games that would use the Super FX 2 chip. The only real notable one that did is Yoshi's Island. Yeah. So, which is another classic. Otherwise, I think the Super Nintendo version of Doom also did, but that didn't come out super hot compared to other versions. Cool that it existed, but
yeah.
But yeah, this was ready to release, and then they just decided not to. A lot of people speculated at the time that was because the Nintendo 64 was about to come out, and they thought pretty heavily about we're probably going to make a Star Fox there, which they did. Star Fox 64. My favorite Star Fox, I think most people's favorite Star Fox, I would think. I love that game. Star Fox 64, I'll throw that out there too, is probably a top 5 N64 game for me personally. I feel that strongly.
I would be tempted to put it in the top 10 of all-time games for me.
Oh,
that's
get out of here.
Shut up. Shut your fucking face.
Star Fox 64 is so good.
I like it.
It's an endlessly replayable game.
Yes, it is. And there aren't as many of those as you'd think.
I still feel like, obviously on the Super Nintendo Star Fox games, Star Fox 1, and I did play like just a second or two of Star Fox 2. The controls are a little tough, sure. It's a little stiff.
You don't have that second analog stick. You don't have a first analog stick.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of feel the same a little bit about Star Fox 64. I just can't get the handling down to feel quite right to me. I don't know. I just don't love that game. I don't have the love that everyone else has for it.
It's honestly probably the reason why I have to invert the y-axis on every single game I play. Just because I think that like got me so used to being like, yep, nope, that's how you would control it if that was your face.
You're totally right.
It does feel right with like flying games, I will say. Yeah, it does. Yeah. I do feel sometimes like when I'm aiming a gun or something, I feel like I want it to just be up is up, down is down. But yeah, flying a spaceship, I might want to invert those controls.
For whatever reason, I never did when it came to like then playing GoldenEye or playing Halo or whatever. I kind of just stuck with the regular, not the inverted, even though I loved games like Star Fox 64 so much with the inverted. But anyway, back to Star Fox 2. So officially released. I finally got a chance to play like the fully finished ROM. For what it's worth, it only takes like 30-ish minutes to beat this game. There's not a ton there, but I really like what is there. There's a lot of really clever ideas. It's a lot more ambitious than you might think it is. There's a really cool, it kind of sets you at first in this overworld. There's cutscenes going on, which Star Fox has always been really good with, just kind of setting an atmosphere. It's kind of Nintendo's way of making a Star Wars thing with cute animal creatures. So in this overworld, your objective is to kind of protect your home base planet. And Andros, in his weird ape form, is sending out minions and missiles to attack your home base. So in the overworld, you're kind of seeing these missiles come towards you, and you, as your kind of Arwing avatar, need to go and kind of intercept those missiles. Otherwise, your base is going to take damage. So once you go and touch one of those missiles, it puts you in this kind of free-flying Star Fox gameplay mode where you're just kind of finding, your target, this being the missile, within the fully 3D space. So it's not like the Star Fox 64 or original Star Fox where you're kind of on rails with kind of a limited view space. This is the full 3D mode like happens in Star Fox 64.
Huh. That's sweet.
It is. It's really ambitious for a Super Nintendo game that they were able to actually pull this off. And it works. Another really cool thing that they didn't have to do is you can play as 6 different characters. All of them play slightly differently. It's like there's voice acting happening there. They're not just like there's like that's happening, but they're actually saying words, which I'm like, wow, they really went into this. Like they spent some time on this thing. You have a second character with you, so you can play as, Fox or Falco, any of the main characters. I picked Falco because Falco's cool. He's a real dick, so had to pick Falco, and then it like picks a second character for you. You kind of have to stop it to select, and it selected Peppy, but as Peppy does, he just kind of begs you to do whatever training thing you need to do over and over and over and over and over again. Like I get it. I know how to do the barrel roll move in this game, but sure, I'll keep doing that. This game isn't that hard. I'm taking damage, but I'm still fine. But yeah, so you defeat the missile in the overworld, and then you have to kind of take out these enemy Andross bases as you're kind of moving your way from one corner of the overworld playfield towards Andross's base. You'll get into these Andross mini base areas where you turn from the regular R-wing that's flying into this kind of land, I'd call it like in Star Wars, the kind of walker.
The AT-STs.
Yes.
The two-legged
guys. Yes. It's very, very similar to that. They basically ripped it off.
Okay.
But then you're kind of moving around on foot. Generally, you're kind of finding switches to unlock the base to get inside of it while you're kind of taking fire from different directions. It's 3D, so you're kind of having to use the shoulder buttons to kind of look left or right because you don't have that analog control. But a little clunky at first, but you kind of get used to it. And it's
I didn't even know that you could turn the camera left or right.
Yeah.
I was just moving, I was just strafing throughout all of those segments, like just being like, all right, everything has to be directly in front of me in order for me to hit it.
Definitely. And that's kind of what you have to do. You have to just kind of get used to that being your reality. And yeah, that is a little jank in 2020 to get used to that, but
it's still cool though. It's not unplayable. Like I would get into those sections and I would be like, yep, no, I know how to do this. Like,
yep,
it's pretty well communicated. And
yep. And when you get into those little bases, it kind of gets into like dungeon crawler or even kind of like a Doom vibe happening. Which is kind of cool. Like, again, really impressive that Super Nintendo can pull this off with this Super FX2 chip. So, like, the music isn't quite as good as the original Star Fox or Star Fox 64, but those are what I consider kind of top tier soundtracks. So, can't really blame them too much for that. But I think if you have access to this, it's super worth playing for 30 minutes of your time just to see what the Super Nintendo is capable of, it, especially if you have any passing interest in Star Fox.
Yeah, so is there like any like strategy element? Because I was getting a little bit of that vibe with like that overworld map where you're kind of picking which node you're going to go to. Like, is there a little bit of strategy going on there, or
a little bit?
Is that pretty light?
It's definitely light. It's definitely more of a straightforward action thing with an overworld. But there's actually towards your base, there's kind of a node that's not too far away that acts as like a charge up missile that can take out enemy missiles if it's like charged up and ready to go, where if you land on that, it'll kind of shoot out and take out one of those enemy Andross missiles without you having to go in and start the whole like gameplay loop in the freeform mode. So there's little things that you can do, and you can decide which way you want to tackle, this base or that base, or let this missile kind of go past you for a while and then warp back and take care of it later. So there's a little bit of that happening, but the game is kind of so scoped in that there's not much need to strategize.
But it's still such a cool concept.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe that they didn't go back to that well for any of like the future games. Like,
not besides the 3D mode in Star Fox 64 for boss battles, like, and not even all boss battles for that matter, but like when you're fighting Star Wolf, like that's the only time that is comparable to what happens in Star Fox 2. And Star Wolf does make an appearance in this game too with a couple different characters, which is cool.
Nice. Now, do any of those other, like those 2 new characters, are they in any of the the future games or no?
So.
No, so they just totally tabled.
Like, they don't look like Biff and Cat that were in 64. Like, they look like they're just completely different characters. And again, like, that would be cool if like they came back.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, it is crazy to me that Nintendo just decided, like, I kind of get the decision of like, hey, the 64 is just going to so outshine the whatever 3D is impressive on this. Like, even though it is impressive for the Super Nintendo, like, I kind of get the logic of it, but I also don't get the logic of like, if it's that done, or that close to being done, just put it out.
Yeah,
I guess, there are all the production costs and this and that, but I just can't imagine having put, again, if this is like, and the amount of polish you're talking about that's on here, at least the amount of like innovation going on. Like, there's a lot of not just time and effort, but a lot of money probably went into making this game. So
probably millions.
It's crazy. Yeah.
That Super FX 2 chip, it probably not cheap to manufacture, but boy, I would compare the power of that thing to like a 32X system, which is like pretty damn impressive at the time to just go on a cartridge. Like, that's crazy. Yeah.
It's worth, if I remember, which I never do, but if I remember, I'll put this in the show notes. But I watched, if anyone's familiar with SNES Drunk on YouTube, he recently talked about some like ROM hacks or something that like the most like, or like improvement patches or something. I forget what he refers to them as. I think he calls them improvement patches. And one of the things that they have is essentially you can, if you have a ROM for Star Fox, like the original Star Fox, but I'm sure it works for Star Fox 2, there's essentially like, it just runs anything that, maybe it wasn't the Super FX now that I'm thinking about it, maybe, but anything that runs in like mode 7 or anything like that, it just like runs that in HD essentially. So he was like showing clips of like Pilot Wings, like nothing is blurring at all. It's like the whole image is just totally crisp and clear. Damn. And I want to say he showed some clips of Star Fox of like, maybe it wasn't that same patch, but just like a way to make that run. Like there's a patch for Gradius, to Gradius 3 to just run with no slowdown whatsoever. Wow. Same with Contra 3, which I guess has just like a little bit of slowdown.
Yeah,
like he was like, it's not as noticeable, but he was like, this just essentially eliminates it. So now that I'm like rattling these games off, I'm like, maybe he didn't talk about Star Fox, but either way, if you aren't familiar with SNES Drunk, it's worth checking out his channel for either these kind of random, like weird, obscure things, but he's also just like talking about classic Super Nintendo, just classic games in general, whether they're ones you've heard of or not. So,
he's
worth checking out. Sorry to tangent. Yeah, sorry to tangent there for a sec, especially because I think I'm wrong now that I'm thinking about it. But I'm pretty sure there was something about Star Fox running.
We'll fact check you.
It's still the same theme though. Like I wanted to talk about Star Fox 2 because it was such an interesting, ambitious thing, and that's what SNES Drunk gets into too.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. For sure. Thanks for saving me there.
That's what
Thanks
I'm here
for saving
for,
me there. Well, I know John's been also putting a lot of time into the SNES. Keep wanting to say SNES Classic, but the online games that are available on the Switch. So what have you been playing, John?
Yeah, so earlier in the podcast, I mentioned, not this episode, but that they uploaded Breath of Fire 1 to the SNES Online service.
In like the initial batch, right? Of like 20 games.
And I mentioned how like, that seems like a really interesting choice to just include as like, we have got all your favorite games, like Super Mario World, Super Metroid, and Breath of Fire.
Yeah, there's a Capcom RPG, you know?
And like, I had, a bit of a relationship with Breath of Fire 1, but like I had a much bigger game in my life was Breath of Fire 2.
Sure.
And that got added recently to the SNES Online service. And man, I kind of forgot how much this game meant to me.
Yeah.
It was pretty much my first JRPG that like really sucked me in, that also like introduced me to a lot of the tropes. Like there was tons of people who were coming into and leaving your party, and like that was shifting a lot, and there was a ton of different mini games and this giant scope of, this conspiracy that was taking over the world, and you're going in, and all of these things that have become kind of rote to me over time, but this was the game that basically introduced it all to me, and because of that was really important to me. And I have just ingrained so much of that game is just muscle memory to me, where I was
that's
like,
always comforting.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where I'm supposed to go. Like, I don't know if the game is communicating this that well, or just because I have played this game so much that I know. But I think that it is like, I think Breath of Fire 1 is a good game, but I really think that Breath of Fire 2 like has so many improvements, and like, but while still maintaining like a ton of the features that are really good in Breath of Fire 1, like I think it's just an overall improvement and like an incredible game still. And I don't know how much of that is, you know, me looking through rose-colored glasses and
it's
like,
tough to separate it, isn't it?
Well, like what compared to other like JRPGs, like, and maybe you even talked about this on when we talked about Breath of Fire 1 before, but like what sets it apart from the just traditional JRPG of that era, if anything, or is it just doing it really well?
I think it's just doing it really well. Like the only other games that I would compare it to, like Chrono Trigger, you know, has like a much larger scope, but I think that also came out like a couple of years. Was that 96 or 5?
I think it was fairly late. Yeah, I want to say.
I think so too. Yeah,
and like same with like Final Fantasy 6. I don't know when that
definitely
came out.
Yeah,
but like those were like huge. Like those games are like masterpieces that like kind of push the entire like the SNES to its like capability.
Yeah,
like,
those were like
maximum
swan songs of the system, kind of,
like,
and the genre for that matter.
Yeah.
So like this is very like simplistic in comparison to like those, but it also, you know, came out a couple of years before, and like I think it just like does its job of, here's a story that, you know, this fantasy story, and here are the characters, and the characters are all developed and they all have like personality, and
that
like,
always helps.
I think
I was gonna say story goes a long way in an RPG.
It's the story. Half, honestly, I think it's the story, and the other half is just like unique character design. Like I mentioned this in Breath of Fire 1, how like there aren't others, like you are a human and there's like one other like human with wings, but beyond that, like everyone is kind of just an anthropomorphic like animal.
Yeah.
And
that's cool actually, because that's like, not to say that Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI look the same, but I mean they have a somewhat similar aesthetic. They all have that kind of like fantasy, medieval,
both from
not
Square.
To generalize. Yeah, but they I know what you mean. Like this game looked like you were playing it, John was playing it just a little bit before we started recording, and it's like really bright and colorful, and like the music.
Well, it's again, a lot of these developed, right?
Yeah,
which is really strange that Capcom made RPGs during this time, like, but they did.
Yeah, and it's got some ideas in it too. Like I think you said it was in the first game as well, but like the auto battle system. So like again, the idea.
Nice, and I can't believe that wasn't made standard in like '93.
Right.
Yeah, it seems great to like just, again, if you're enjoying the story, like, and you're just, okay, I got my party set up the way I want it, and I got my items equipped the way I need them, and whatever. Again, I don't know how the management works in this game, but like, you equip and do what you need to do, and then you just kind of let the game run its course. I'm sure you're taking charge in like boss battles or more important fights, but like, okay, I'm just fighting some minions. Let me just plow through these guys and get my experience. And then again, on the Switch, having that added like save states. And again, I don't know what the save system is like in this game, but just those added perks or those quality of life improvements over what apparently the original game even had a little bit of. So that's pretty cool.
And this is, again, me realizing that you can put save states on the Super Nintendo. Like, good Lord, I keep forgetting this. I keep forgetting that I could also rewind after I make
I will admit I used
decision.
Rewind a little bit in Star Fox 2, and not even because it was difficult, but because like I wasn't paying enough attention in one boss battle or something. Like, no, I'm not going to play this whole section again. Let me rewind and do this proper.
Yeah, like I accidentally used an antidote on a character that didn't need it.
Right.
Like, why did I do that?
Oh, I didn't even think about little stuff like that
would
in
be
an
great.
RPG.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, just like, whoops, I didn't mean to click that.
Yep.
Like, that is actually, I kind of forgot about the rewind feature.
It's
but like, my favorite thing about save states is like, there's so many of the, not so much with older games as much, but like, every now and then there's a game that just has like a long-winded tutorial or opening segment or whatever, and like you can just make a save state after that.
Yes.
Like, I know how to play A Link to the Past. Okay, I don't need to fight this wizard. I forget his name, but I don't need to do this opening sequence every time I play this game. So I love the idea of like, I actually haven't booted up Link to the Past on the Switch yet, but once I do, I will definitely make a save state like after that and just like, okay, the game is open to me now.
Totally.
So I do love it for that. So
it's good stuff.
I don't know. Anything more to add to Breath of Fire 2 though, John? Or
no, I just unlocked the first shaman, which means I'm now opened up the fusion mechanic of different characters, and I'm just so happy to be
fusing
back in
different characters
that
together.
So in the first Breath of Fire, you did fuse basically every character other than like the main three, but in this game you are fusing different shaman to your characters, and that can transform them into different looking characters.
Wow.
Or it can just power them up.
Heck yeah.
Like it's an incredibly involved like it's so good. I haven't even unlocked the cooking mechanic. Oh, dang. So pumped.
Okay, so there's some depth here, yeah.
I did actually just remember one last thing that I've kind of forgot about, but like was also a trope that has become very important in games like Chasm or Ashen or Sparklite, is that you do like travel the world and bring people back to a village that you build.
Yes,
and like the very first thing, like, because the game opens and you have to find like a hideout for your friend who's running from like the police, and like he's rebuilding this old man's hut that you accidentally burned down in like the beginning of the game, and then like as you go, like you walk into a room and there's this person who's like, oh, I'm living in this bathroom because I have no home to stay in. You can still use it though. And then once your town has enough houses, you can go back to that person and be like, hey, I've got a whole house for you.
Man,
Nice.
I love the village building stuff. I'm just a sucker for that stuff.
Same. It's so rewarding.
I haven't messed with it into like in Breath of the Wild. I didn't get to I don't even think I found that like village that you can start like building, and I haven't messed with that in too many different games, but I'll have to maybe dip my toe into some Breath of Fire. I almost said Breath of the Wild, but some Breath of Fire. Do you recommend 2 over 1 in terms of
just because like I think it does a lot more things, and I think it also does it better. And also, I remember I was frustrated in texting like you all guys at the beginning of the game. I was like, I don't remember these games kicking my ass so much in the beginning. But yeah, you just gotta buy a ton of herbs and antidotes at the beginning and just get used to spending all of your money on an inn or on those healing items, because you just gotta plow through until you get another character in your party.
Right. Nice. Well, we got one more game we want to talk about real quick. I don't think it's going to be too long here, but it's a pretty short game. It's called Whipseey and the Lost Atlas, or if you saw it real quick on the eShop, you might think it was Kirby and the Lost Atlas. But gameplay wise, it's actually a little bit different. It's you're not able to fly and you're not able to copy enemies' abilities, but you're
Simon Belmont.
But you're definitely a pink puffball,
and he does a little dance. I saw
super
that.
Cute. Yeah, the dance is very Kirby-esque after you beat a level, but this is just like but somewhere between like 8 and 16-bit pixel art, pretty cute. Nothing overly flashy or anything, but like on that like maybe Miles and Kilo level. Not even quite. I really like the pixel art actually in Miles and Kilo.
Yeah,
it's very expressive. This is like maybe a little less expressive in like the animations, but
it's like a game in between Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it even has a little, and there's small little bits of jank. I don't want to just go into like right away things that I don't like about this game, but I guess the main mechanics, it's a 2D side-scrolling platformer, and essentially you start each level with 5 lives. When you kill an enemy, every enemy takes 1 hit, and you just have a whip. Your character's name is Whipseey, and you just basically whip an enemy, and you can either whip enemies or you can whip. Sometimes there's like these little like floating grapples or whatever that you can like jump, whip that, and you kind of grab onto that and swing back and forth until you jump off. And then when you're in the air, you can hit jump again, and you'll like take your whip and kind of do like a propeller over your head and kind of float down slowly. And to get to some of that jank is like, at least for me, like the timing of the jump, like there'll be times where like I'm thinking I'm gonna jump, land, and then like immediately jump again as soon as I land, but it'll register it as like I'm pressing that float down, like propeller move, just like a split second before I land. And then it doesn't register the landing properly and I fall off. And it's not too much. Again, this is a really short game. It's 5 levels. I'm on the last level right now. And you start with 5 lives. Every enemy you kill gives you a few coins. I think I said all this already. But once you get 100 coins, you get a free life. You get about 5 hits, I think. You get a health bar is about 5 hits. Every now and then an enemy will drop some health. Like a big blue coin that'll give you, I think, 5 coins and also some health. But yeah, you basically just like, there's like these single screen challenges. Sometimes it scrolls a little, but like you just have to get through this one little puzzle or clear these enemies, get to the room. Again, it's very Kirby-esque, go
Sounds
through the
like
little door. And then you just have like those 5 lives to complete that level. If you get a game over, you get a game over. You are able to keep your coins, so you can kind of cheese this. Like if you had 95 coins and you got a game over. But on the other hand, if you get to it, like you beat a level and you only have 1 life left, there's almost no point in even trying to beat the next level with just that 1 life. Because it is a decently challenging game. It's not, every once in a while it comes from that janky control, but it's not asking you to do like some kind of Celeste platforming or anything like that. So it's still, it's more like, I don't want to say puzzle platformy, but it feels like you kind of just watch the obstacles, watch the enemies, figure out like, this is how I'm going to weave through these like flames that are shooting at me. It's more just like an obstacle course.
So tougher than Kirby in that way anyway.
Definitely harder than a Kirby game.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say like me, if I were to beat this whole game, even with all me continuing, I haven't finished the last level yet, but it'll probably be less than an hour, maybe an hour and a half. It's a really short game.
Actually, like in terms of like the like life management and like the platforming difficulty, it kind of reminds me of like Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon. Where it's, at least that's like the level of difficulty that I'm encountering.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I when you die, like if you get a game over, like you have to play the whole level over.
Yeah.
And like if you just like lose a life, like, then you can start back over on the screen that you died on.
Mm-hmm.
So there is like that little like, oh yeah, I'm memorizing these enemies patterns. I'm memorizing the like length of the jump that I have to make to get over this bottomless pit, which is where I mostly die, is from getting hit by an enemy and then like falling backwards into a bottomless pit.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that Castlevania knockback. Nothing crazy, but yeah, I'm on the last level. It's a typical castle, and the one thing is like, so there's a lot of like kind of dry bone style enemies or whatever, skeletons that you hit and they don't die, so you don't get any coins from them. So you run this last level, there's a couple enemies that dish out some coins, but you're really not getting there's probably no chance of getting a 1-up on this last level unless you're just stacking them up and getting game over after game over.
Right.
So I got to the final boss one time, but I was not able to. I was on my last life, so I wasn't able to take another stab at it. So. But yeah, I'm definitely having fun. It was on sale for $3. I think it's normally $6, so it's definitely not asking much.
Right.
It's not the most polished thing, but it's definitely got
it's a
plenty
solid
of charm.
I like it a lot. Like, yeah, I have some issues with it, but for the most part, like we were having a discussion like a little earlier about like with like the procedurally generation, like, and I was just wondering like if there is going to be kind of a reaction to that, like people making more like shorter but just like really like focused level design games.
Yeah.
And I think that this game does a really good job of like, yeah, this is a very purposeful level design. It's like very screen based, but at the same time it's like, yeah, it's very cohesive, and it's like trying to put something together that's not also at the same level, like the Massacre like difficulty level of a Celeste, where it's like that precision level of like level design.
Yeah, and like you said, back to like kind of the roguelike thing, like it's not trying to just like milk everything out of these mechanics. It's just like, here's what this game is. Pretty simple. But what I will say is I would love to see like a sequel featuring this character. Like I like the way it controls. It would be nice if maybe it was just like a little less stiff, a little more fluidity to the movement and stuff. But again, I do, like there's times where I'm like running, like I guess the easiest way, I think I said this to you earlier too, John, like the easiest way to put it is like, if I were playing a Mario game, I wouldn't be missing these jumps. Like it's just like the way it feels is just like I'll jump a little too early and bonk my head on the ceiling and then fall into the pit, or I'll jump a little too late and I'll overshoot the jump a tiny bit. And it's just like little tiny things. It's a small occurrence. It's again, I'm having fun the whole time while I'm playing, but I am getting honestly pretty mad. Like I've had a couple that I kind of screamed at my TV a couple times quietly, but under my breath. But that's great. Yeah, definitely recommend it again. Either $3-6. It's a very cheap game, and if you're into 2D side-scrolling platformers, I don't think you could really go wrong with this one. It's nice, as long as you're not expecting the next Celeste or something. You know, it's a really fun game.
Sweet.
But yeah, I think we can wrap it up there this week. And we'll be back next week with some more video games. But until then, you can find us at pursuingpixels.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Just look up Pursuing Pixels. And again, if you want to drop us a line, pursuingpixels@gmail.com. If you want to ask a question or, I don't know, comment about anything, feel free to hit us up.
Yeah.
But until next week, we will catch you all then, and take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I actually remember the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man was the first movie I ever got bored at.
Really?
Yeah.
The first one?
At theaters.
Okay.
That was The Mummy Returns for me.
Oh, God. I really hate mummies. Brendan Fraser is the worst actor of all time. He is
you just gave
worst.
Evidence to the contrary for me.
I will never. There's also that clip. There's me and my roommate in college there was the clip from, I don't know if it was The Mummy Returns. It might have been an even later Mummy movie.
Yeah.
I don't know which one that was, but then there was
too many of those.
Yeah. And then they did that Journey to the Center of the Earth movie that he was in, and there was like a clip in the trailer, at least the commercial, where he was just like, "We're at the center of the earth." And we would just mock him relentlessly for those two clips. He's so bad. What do you like him in?
I like him in Scrubs.
Encino Man? I mean, come on.
I like him in George of the Jungle.
Oh, yeah.
And Dudley Do-Right.